So my parents go to Medjugorje in the mid to late 90s.
Mary is jealous, by the way. That your
Who?
parents went to. Mary is jealous. She's never been there.
I thought you were talking about like this person. I'm like,
I thought you were looking at the chat. Yeah, Mary's jealous. She's never been to Medjugorje. So
Yeah.
my parents go, and this is like the mid to late 90s, and my mom like really thought like this could be the end in the year 2000. So my whole basement was stocked with cans of stuff. Like I'm talking, and it's like, it's funny because that's like very much like the 3 days of darkness thing. Like me and Kennedy were talking about it. It's like people that think like, okay, if you have these candles and you tape your windows, like that's a very like rapture way of thinking, right? Like you're going to escape the punishment that's coming. It's like a lot of us just have to kind of put our faith in God and just say, okay, God, whatever comes, I'm willing to suffer. And you're not going to be able to protect yourself from some of this stuff. And it's like, I think people that like obsess on some of those private revelations, what could happen is, I'll tell you what happened. My mom stocks the whole basement with this stuff, scared the living daylights out of my older brother. And then when 2000 came and nothing happened, my older brother was really severely affected by that and almost thought all of it was fake because, I mean, it seemed like things were escalating to that point, right? Like you see Mary's appearing everywhere and she's looking at the Fatima prophecies and she's looking at Akita and she's looking at, and then she sees Medjugorje and it just seemed like something was escalating to a crescendo at that point. Pope John Paul II was talking about the end times, all this stuff. So you have to be very careful in relaying private revelation to your children, I would say, especially. Because you don't like, and maybe we'll get into some of the videos that Enoch's been sending us, because a lot of the emotion-based stuff, you guys really have to be cautious with your children, because especially I know Rob and I have like a single story of like a very emotional experience as a kid, and then Enoch was a youth. What was your actual title? You were in charge of youth ministry?
Yeah, all high school.
But now, what was your youth program like? Was it very emotionally based, or what was it like?
In the beginning, till I found the tradition, and I switched.
But you had the authority to do that?
Yes, I revamped the whole thing. Yeah.
And how did they react to that?
We got more kids coming back after confirmation. It wasn't a graduation anymore. The majority of the young adults that stuck around from confirmation to college are now going to the TLM.
Wow.
So
what was it like when you first stepped into this role, and how old are you, and how far along in your conversion are you? Like, give me a little snapshot, and what diocese is this? Like, I want to hear the story, because we were supposed to talk about this when it was just me and you, right, when Rob was out having Philomena. So we wound up doing our silly Catholic speaker thing, but
you're gonna have to revamp that now that you're one.
Catholic speaker. So
Rob, we'll do one on my channel, buddy.
Okay, good.
I want to get into so like all right, I really don't even know your conversion too much. Like you were raised Catholic nominally? Like what was your conversion like?
Yeah, I was baptized, confirmed, all that. And then I mean, we were priesters. My parents went to Mass, Christmas, and Easter only. So I didn't have my conversion. Honestly, my conversion came through boredom. I was just bored. Yeah, I was just bored.
I was in a comfortable bed. Rob labored for hours in that uncomfortable chair.
3 nights on a recliner.
Exactly.
3 nights.
You have to push a few times. She's bragging. Settle down, woman. Every woman goes through it. You're not special.
Well, you know what they say, right? You know, a woman has to have a child come out sideways for her to get a glimpse of what a man cold feels like. So if that's happening, you understand what us men go through. But no, I mean, it wasn't. Let's just fast forward. When I was doing youth ministry, when I first started youth ministry,
no. Go back. I want to hear, how old were you? What led to your looking into the faith? What led to your return to the church?
So I always had faith. You know, it was always there. But it was me picking up the Bible, the scriptures, just one random evening, and I just started reading Revelations, and it was just so intriguing to me, very intriguing. And then I ended up having a Protestant mindset, because when you look up stuff on Christianity, Ray Comfort, Kirk Cameron, R.C. Sproul's,
Dude, I literally read an R.C. Sproul book. I was
when
I first have my conversion, I'm listening to Christian radio.
Wow. Okay.
I'm listening to Christian radio, right? And I think there's nothing wrong with it. I'm learning about Jesus on Christian radio. And it wasn't until I heard an anti-Catholic sermon that I went, whoa, what is this? And then I started looking into specifically Catholicism. So that's why I'm asking, like, was there something that clicked that made you go, wait, I need to study my faith better?
Well, I mean, like, I picked every book that you could find. I mean, Lee Strobel, all of Lee Strobel stuff. William Lane Craig,
Case for Christ.
Yep. Case for Faith.
That's actually still I would still recommend that to people early on. Like, The Case for Christ is a very good documentary, and I don't know if you've read the book, but there's a documentary called The Case for Christ that I may even send my brother's way if he asks.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
It was my dad who got upset that we were going Protestant. He said, "Listen, you're Eastern. You're like our whole faith, our tradition, our entire heritage is Catholicism." And I said, we don't even go to mass every Sunday. Like, what do you care? And then he said, I'll tell you what, I don't have the answers, but somebody else might. So do me a favor, for the first 3 months, just go to a local Bible study, this parish right here. And if you're not convinced, then you can be Protestant. And Providence had it. When we got there, God bless it for sure. But when we got there, it was a biblical scholar that was doing and it was biblical interpretation on the church fathers. My brother and I had no chance.
None.
Because they're undefeated.
None, you were done.
Yeah, so it was over.
So you and your brother together. So, so for people that don't know, Fawaz has a twin brother, right?
Yeah, he's fraternal.
Elijah's your twin brother. I gotta meet him, dude. Can he come?
No.
He can't make it?
No.
Definitely not. Did you throw him the invite?
I'll try again.
Throw me the invite. I want to meet your brother, dude. This is your brother. I want to meet.
I'd love to. Somebody's got to run the business.
I'm gonna call him. Okay. I want him there.
Yeah,
okay, so you and your brother together kind of have this conversion together.
Yep.
Okay, so now, all right, so you go through that Bible study, you start taking your faith seriously. Now you get involved with the parish. How old are you at this time?
2008, somewhere around there. I'm in my mid-20s, early 20s.
That's pretty cool. That's
early
pretty young.
20s. Yeah, early 20s, somewhere around there. And then I was sitting at Mass at one point. I was upset that we were going to Mass because the Chargers were playing. I wanted to watch the Chargers play. But then we ended up going to Mass. And then the director of youth ministry at the time stood up and says, "We need more confirmation teachers." And I was like, "I think I could do that." At the time, I'm reading Polycarp. I'm thinking that I'm, the Catholic scholar here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I knew nothing. I still know nothing. So we're sitting over there. And then I ended up teaching confirmation and got involved in that parish. And 3 youth ministers later, it was a high turnover. People kept coming and leaving. But one of them that came in became one of my best friends. He ran youth ministry and tradition. He was the first one to introduce me to tradition. He came from Thomas Aquinas College, TAC.
Who is this?
His name is Joseph Cunningham. He lives in San Diego.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I learned a lot from him. And when he left the position, they gave it to me. I mean, I have no degree. So this was around 2013. I got married on Saturday. I got the job on Wednesday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Your honeymoon is crash course talking to kids about Jesus.
Right. Yeah. So
this was a big program though, right?
The biggest of the diocese, 400 students a year.
And so what is it like when you first go in? Because I want to get into some of this. Rob, can you pull any of the videos up that Fawaz has been sending us? Why don't we play a video of, like, let's just play one of the videos that Fawaz sent us, because there's a reason I'm getting into this stuff, and I want the audience to understand where we're coming from. Also, guys, there's a lot of people in there right now. Hit like, subscribe. Guys, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. It helps the channel grow. Everything is very important. You guys are obviously here because you like us at this point. We're obviously the most interesting and engaging Catholics doing this at this point.
By far. No, really
we're so humble about ourselves too, guys. Come on.
Credit what credit is due, man.
So Fawaz is funny because he knows about Rob's upbringing, and Rob is very he has PTSD from these emotional Steubenville conference type experiences.
For anyone that knows me, it is so antithetical to who I am. Like,
So Fawaz will send in a group text. We're in a group text. He'll go, "Hey Rob, you need some motivation today. I got this one for you."
it'll be like 20 minutes of me just going off on it.
Wait till you see some of the videos Fawaz. It's the funniest thing because it'll just be like the middle of the day, and all of a sudden Fawaz will be like, "Yo, Rob, I got some inspiration for you to get through your day today, brother. Let's go."
Okay, I got
click
one.
on it
Hold
every
on.
time, and I die laughing. You got one or what? All right,
Yeah.
Here we go. It's coming. Here we go. Let's play one.
I was an atheist. I didn't believe in God. I didn't think any of it was real. And when I heard that we were coming here, I was kind of upset. I didn't know what to expect, and I was scared because I was going to be an outcast. But last night, I truly felt God. And that is probably one of the best feelings I've had in my entire life. I feel like all the worries in my world just disappeared over these past few days, and I loved this trip, and I'm so happy to be here.
All right, so now listen. I'm so happy that this kid had an experience of God, right? Like you have to say that. Like I don't care. Look, God can use any means to bring somebody to Him, and we kind of tease Rob about it because Rob had a lot of these emotional based experiences growing up, and the thing is, the high does wear off.
Well, like you said, he was taken out of his home, out of his daily life, put in with a group of other kids, taken away from all his worries for a few days, and got to listen to some probably pretty crappy music, but I mean that's the thing. He's taken out of the world and given this experience. But what happens when he goes back to the world and all those worries are still there?
Yeah,
And he's not with these people. He's not having these feelings. In 3 days, for a kid who didn't believe in God, in 3 days, did they instill any sort of knowledge into him? Like when he goes home, does he have anything
right?
Right. Does he have a foundation there?
There's no depth to it. And it's like, I think back to something similar that happened. I mean, I've told the story 20 times on the show, but like I went to a youth group in Scranton, Pennsylvania,
Right,
and
Sam.
everybody around me is hysterically crying because they got the Holy Spirit. And I'm like, God, do you not love me or something? Because everybody else here is getting the Holy Spirit and I'm not getting it. And I didn't understand. And it really did I didn't get the emotional experience. And that was what messed me up. Because I was waiting. I'm seeing everybody hysterically crying around me, and I'm getting nothing. And I'm like, maybe God just doesn't want. I don't know. I don't understand. It didn't make sense. But the problem with these emotional experiences, there's no theological depth to them, right? So that when later on in my life, I have my conversion, it's very similar to what Enoch had. Is you don't know the difference in Protestantism and Catholicism. The only thing I had was a true belief in the real presence. My mom instilled that in me.
Wow.
So my mom did such a good job of showing me Eucharistic miracles, and she showed me like Marian apparitions. Like those things are good to show your kid. You just don't want to scare them about apocalyptic stuff because it's pretty frightening for a kid. Like you don't realize what you're saying to a 12, 13-year-old about the end of the world. Like you really got to be careful.
To be fair, Our Lady did show Jacinta hell.
I know that, but saying the end of the world is different than teaching your child about the consequence of mortal sin.
That's true.
I do.
Jacinta received special graces for her to see that and still.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you that the fact that Our Lady showed Jacinta and Lucia and all of them hell is what made me discuss hell with my children, because I come from an upbringing where my mother was terrified to talk about hell because you listen to boomers and they all say the same thing. God, we never heard about the love of God. We never heard about the love of God. And I don't believe that's true. I believe that after the council, they just kept saying, we never heard about the love of God, because my mother doesn't remember the council. My mother doesn't remember the traditional Latin mass. My mother remembers having her conversion post-conciliar and and she says the taglines that you hear from all the people from that generation. It's not her actual memory that she has. She has the memory of the things that she was hearing. Because I read the Saints and all I hear about is the love of God. Right?
Yeah. That's true. But the Saints doing it such a, I don't know, it's such a fundamental way because they have a great understanding of what love of God actually means. Like if you read one of the letters of Leonard of Port Morris on the fewness who shall be saved, that's a letter every single Catholic should read. It's called the fewness of those who shall be saved. It can be pretty depressing at the beginning, but when you go down and you start reading, he talks about how God continues to knock even if he doesn't have to anymore. And it just shows you like that his love.
And, okay. All right. Yeah. Two things. I want to touch what you just said there, but also I don't want anybody to think I'm knocking these experiences. I'm not.
Right. No,
like you definitely and just because I didn't experience something doesn't I don't want to ever put God in a box. Like right. God works through you differently than he works through me. God knows all of our hearts and how to reach us. So even like we goof around about some of this stuff, like I don't have any issues with people having a charismatic experience of God. None of that. Like that's not. I'm not even I'm stealing the line from Steve Cunningham. I'm not a no salvation outside the traditional Latin Mass guy. I'm not. I do think Jesus is truly present in the Eucharist and the Novus Ordo. Yep. I think there are objective differences and there's an objective. What would you say? Better? It's better objectively to go to the traditional Mass, but that doesn't
objectively superior.
Objectively superior, but I would never knock anybody's experience that goes to the Novus Ordo. It's not what I'm getting at. Wait, Enoch, what were you just saying there, real quick? Because I had something so important to say to that.
Leonard of Port Maurice.
What?
The letter from Port Maurice, Saint Port Maurice, about the fewness who shall be saved. But yeah, when you go down, he talks about that God continues to knock and knock.
That's exactly right. Okay, so the thing is, God always is knocking, but he'll never force himself on us.
Correct.
Right? Like he respects our free will so much.
Yes.
So it's like I don't care. People like you really do have to get to a point where you're like, okay, God, if you're real, show me you're real. Like knock and the door will be open, seek and you will find. He'll never bombard his way into you. Like he may hit you upside the head with a 2x4 with a crisis in your life because he loves you, but he still won't force you to believe. Like it's really, God really does need you to make the choice for him. So
yeah. Well, I again, not knocking any of those, the atheist kid, kudos to him. And sometimes to have that emotional experience, I guess you could say, can open someone's will towards God, but that has to be fed through true faith and true catechesis. But what my experience with youth is, they get so addicted to that emotional experience, they go back and seek it every single year with these conferences.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens between these conferences is there's just normal life. But guess what? If I get my once a year conference, I can reignite my faith with Christ. That's not faith.
No, it's like you gotta go. Like you gotta go.
What you said earlier, Enoch, on a different subject, like they feel like they have to keep topping it.
Yes. Yep. They have to.
Yeah, you go conference hopping to get that high back, right? So now just to touch on Jacob here. So he says, all I know is the same Jesus I knew as a Pentecostal was the same Jesus in the Catholic Mass. The Holy Ghost is a gentleman. There's one benefit Protestant converts have is that, like, I think a lot of Catholics focus so much on like magisterial documents and the lives of the saints that they don't have a true love for Scripture. Yeah. And really knowing Jesus Christ, that personal relationship that they develop. And it's like, because I kind of came in through Protestantism, like my first experience was really falling in love with Jesus and falling in love with Scripture and then going into the church stuff. And it's like, I really do think there's something beautiful about meeting Christ and I'm not saying that's the preferred way or anything, but there's something beautiful about being a convert where you have such a deep love for Jesus and Scripture, and then you find the fullness of the faith in the church. That's why some of the best Catholics are converts, because like they really believe this stuff. You know, it's like so many of us Catholics, we take it so for granted being cradle Catholics, like the richness of what we really have at our disposal.
Right. Well, let's be honest. How many of us would appreciate the TLM if it wasn't for the Novus Ordo?
Dude, my priest gave a great homily on that. Like, he really did. He said, look, we talk about mutual enrichment, right? Because me and Nick Cavazos talked about this, and that was another interview that wut Rob, I was in charge of comments and talking, and I kept talking over Nick, and I feel really bad about that.
It was a funny one to listen to later.
I kept talking over. I'm so obnoxious when I do that, man. I'm sorry. But he was talking about mutual enrichment with me, and he's like, what has the traditional mass benefited from the Novus Ordo? And I should have said this, because you want to know what? It's like, until you don't know how much you love something until it's gone. And I really do think people were taking for granted the traditional Latin mass, and growing up in the Novus Ordo, then getting exposed to it, it's like you see a fervor in people where they're like, no, I love the mass. And it's like, I don't know if you would have had that unless it was taken away like that.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah, you can't judge something. It's hard to judge something by itself. You need something to compare it to. So you don't realize you have the pearl of great price until you see the crappy little pearl that you used to like.
That's absolutely true. Yeah. To go back to the whole youth ministry, if you don't mind me saying, of course I blame the parents first, but my biggest, because catechesis starts at home. But my biggest thing is, I said this to you guys before, the reason why youth ministry is such a shambles at the moment, it's because, and this is a temptation that I went through as well throughout my youth ministry, is when you put these retreats together or put the night together, you want to see some consolation of visible return at that moment. And if the kids are not crying or visibly and emotionally giving themselves to Christ, you think, oh, I didn't put a good retreat together. And then it really becomes more of your ego than it does for the kids. But in all reality, what you're giving them is damaging their faith more than it's helping them. So that's the temptation I think directors of youth ministry need to get out of. You can have a dry, boring, intellectual, maybe sitting down and in an adoration with Gregorian chant. And I will tell you this, I had two separate nights with youth ministry. At the end of the year, I have a survey of what their favorite night was. And one night was this whole, Jesus rock and roll type stuff, and it was all of bells and whistles. Another night, I asked the young priest, I said, can you come and just sit in the back to hear confessions? I'm going to have Gregorian chant and adoration for 2 hours. Not one kid got off his knees for those 2 hours, and the lines for a confession were long. We didn't get through all. It was 2 hours. We didn't get through everybody. At the end of the year, I asked, what was your favorite night? 90% of them picked that night. We cannot be afraid, because we get so scared. Oh, they're going to be bored. But it's like, you can't be bored with Christ if you truly present it. Yeah, it's
so. All right, so look, I'm going to tell you. All right, so my kids are teens now, right? So it's like my son. I have no. Like he grasps it. Like he loves the deeper concepts and things like that. Mm-hmm. Like teenage girls, my youngest we're good. Like, I'm still catechizing her. My middle daughter rolls her eyes at this stuff still. Like she's not like she's a teenage girl, dude. And it's like, I'm trying to figure out, because they're getting the catechesis. I talk to my kids constantly about stuff. Like I'm always, I actually did catechize my daughter's confirmation class for her. So like I tried to do that, but it's like sometimes a kid's just not interested in it. And it's like, it's hard to, like, you can't just take your kids to mass and expect that they're picking up on these things. So what I've been trying to do is just have like real meaningful conversations with my daughter, and just making sure that I tell her, Sophia, you just need to know how much you are loved. Mm-hmm. You are a child of God. Don't ever forget that, because you want to make sure your kids don't fall into the trap of just what all the other kids are doing. You want your kid to have a conscience and to not be a follower. And it's like, I think I've done a really good job of raising her to be an independent thinker and stuff, but I want her to fall in love with Jesus. It's just, you can't force that on a kid, and God won't force his way on them. Right. So it is a tricky thing, It's like, part of me is like, maybe I should send them for one of these emotional experiences,
Sometimes, if somebody's grounded and they have a foundation, they know, these things can be beneficial. But you're talking about the love of Jesus. If you love me, you'll do my commandments. Like, that never stops. That continues on to your last breath.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good advice, Paul. That's actually good advice.
My favorite memories some of my favorite memories
great advice.
End of growing up were we had a 24/7 perpetual adoration chapel in our parish growing up, and my grandparents would always take like a 2 to 3 a.m. slot on like a a Thursday or something, like the one no one else would take, right? Because they didn't, they were retired, they could do whatever. So anytime I didn't have school the next day, or whatever, I would go with them to adoration, literally in the middle of the night. I would sleep for a few hours, get up, go to the hour of adoration with them, pray the rosary with them silently, and then go back to their place to sleep. And those are my favorite memories of the faith.
Yeah. So Mary Ann's asking if she prays the rosary. So she doesn't pray it on her own. She prays it with me when I make them, right? So the thing is, like, I know later in life, my kids will look back on the family rosary with fond memories. They don't know it in the moment, though, because I remember that. Like, I remember some of my fondest memories with my mom, and my mom just sitting upstairs and praying with me, right? But like in the moment, it's like, I don't want to pray. Like, it's like, it's. Look, I'm going to be honest. Why I share this with everybody. I don't want anybody to think I'm some amazing father and catechist. Like, I'm trying to just be honest with you guys that are coming up on raising kids that are going to become teens. It's not always so easy. And it doesn't matter how much you teach them. Like, sometimes God just has to work in his own timing. And I don't know how God's going to work, but I know God loves me, and he loves me so much that he loves my daughter, and he wants her to have a relationship with him. So I kind of have to also say that God is bigger than some of my mistakes, if I made any mistakes. And a lot of it comes down to just setting the best example I can, showing them how real this is to me, and letting God work in our children's lives at some point, right? And there's a lot of parents dropped the ball when their kids were young and had a later conversion, and this breaks their heart, and they're like, they look back and like, I messed up so bad when I was raising my kids, and now they're not converted, and now it's like you can't even have that conversation with them because it just causes strife when you have, it's like, never underestimate the power of prayer and fasting, though, because I was going through that with my wife when I first converted, and she didn't convert yet. And I had a Lent that I dedicated every one of my penances to my wife's conversion. And I'm talking beginning of Lent, she wanted nothing to do with it. By the end of Lent, my wife had a deep faith in Jesus Christ. So it's like, that's the only hope I could give to anybody. And that's kind of the,
I think with your daughter, I think the thing that is going to help the most, and it might not help right away. It might take a few years, after she goes off on her own, but I think it's going to be just her seeing you and the way you live your life, the way you provide for your family and for her, how much you love your wife and love your kids. She's going to go into the world and see that that's not the norm, right? That's not the way other people live. And she's going to wonder what made you different, what made her life growing up different. And she's going to recognize that it was the faith.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, all right, so we go out on the boat the other day,
Good point,
and it's me, Nicole, and Nikki and Sophia. My youngest wasn't with us, so I had the two older ones with me, and I'm like, we're gonna have some real conversations today. Like, by the end of the boat ride, my daughter was just like, Dad, sometimes I just want to spend time with you, and I don't want to have these deep conversations. Sometimes I just want to hang out with my dad. And I'm like, Sophia, I'm so sorry. You don't understand how much of a burden of responsibility it is to be a dad. Like, you don't know how much you worry for your children's souls. It's all like you talk about carrying a cross. Like, your children's souls are such a heavy cross you carry as a parent. Right. It really is. Like, and we always talk about like being the leader, protector, provider, right? Did they try to swim up? No, they stayed on the boat. But we always talk about being leader, protector, provider. But Don's in a similar situation to what I was just talking about, right? Like, so now his son's an adult, and Don wants to bring him to the traditional mass, and his son's like, no, I'll go to the Novus Ordo. And it's like, it's a hard thing to make up for maybe some of the mistakes you made when he was younger and things. And Don, I'm sorry if I'm sharing something personally you didn't want me to. But I'm dealing with that right now. So it's like, I know, like, I'm making some mistakes and stuff, but I'm really just trusting God that God's going to pick up the gaps where I'm missing. But yeah, it's like the burden of the priesthood is something we don't talk to men about nearly enough. Like, a lot of us think like it's just about like being a man is just lead, protect, provide. That lead has so much to do with being a priest in your home and really making sure your children's souls don't fall into mortal sin. So I've said before, like, do you guys have any like practices with confession with, well, your kids haven't made their communion yet, right, Rob? But like Enoch, with your older ones, like what's your practice with confession with the older ones?
So I got one who had his first communion. He did his confession. He did great, and he continues to do great. He knows what he does. And my wife, God bless her, she went to Catholic school, and you know how Catholic school can be. They could really drive a lot of scrupulosity in souls, and she was one of them. Unfortunately, she's the type that's like, just tell me what to do, and I'm just going to do it. I just wish there was like a list of all the mortal sins and I could just avoid them. And I'm just like, it doesn't work like that. You know, you have to understand there's an aspect of relationship too, and it's not just rule following here. And she like takes out the examination of conscience, and she goes to like, I'm like, you're like, the kid doesn't understand this yet. He knows what he does that, you know, that he is considered a mortal sin, you know. And then so I'll send him off to confession, but I'll sit with him and I'll go, all right, buddy, like let's look at the last, you know, month. This is the confession. You know, talk to me about some of the stuff that you think that you did wrong. And then he doesn't tell me exactly what it is. So we just set up a foundation, and he writes them down, and then he goes in and confesses. I'm just trying to help him understand, like, this is the stuff. But as he gets older, I'm going to start incorporating some of the examinations of conscience so he can understand it a little bit more.
So what I did when they were younger is I said, look, here's a good rule of thumb to follow.
Yeah.
And I know this isn't perfect because I understand there's 3 elements to mortal sin, right? It has to be grave matter, full consent of the will, and full grave matter, full like understanding of it, and full consent, right?
Yeah.
So I told my kids, I said, look, a good rule of thumb is this: if you know something's wrong and you do it anyway,
confess it.
Like that's a really good indicator that you're dealing with a mortal sin, right? Like the only thing missing there is grave matter. But even if it's not grave matter, like if you know something's wrong and you do it anyway, that kind of makes it grave. So
you get them in the habit, which is great.
Yeah. So if you know something's wrong and you do it anyway, like if you know, like you always confess that first off. The other thing I did with them is I said, listen, if you need to go to confession, I will never ask you why. If you don't receive the Eucharist, I will never ask you why.
Yep.
Ever. But you do not receive immortal sin under any circumstance. Like the really teaching them that the Eucharist, that you are eating and drinking judgment upon yourself if you receive immortal sin. So if we go to mass and you don't think you can receive in good conscience, I promise you I will never ask why. I will set up to bring you to confession next time. Or if you say to me, hey, Dad, I need to go to confession, I'll never ask why you need to go. None of that. Like, I want them to know that God's mercy is open to them and they'll never receive judgment from me. I'm never going to pry into why they didn't receive. I'm never like that. That I have found has been, it has made them not worry about telling me they need to go to confession.
Right.
So that's a really good practice that I've had in my family that seems to be working. So if anybody's coming up on teen years or your kids are just making their communion, if that's any help to anybody, that seems to be working with my kids.
I'm going to be using that for sure. I don't know about you guys, but just keeping the same topic, but shifting here a little bit. I felt like I was robbed of my faith when I was going to your everyday Novus Ordo parish. And again, it's not the Novus Ordo that I'm talking about. It's the spirit of Novus Ordo and what the priest that it forms. And when I first read Uniformity with God's Will by St. Alphonsus, that was my first experience with St. Alphonsus. Man, I was so blown away. I wanted to read everything from St. Alphonsus. But I never heard of St. Alphonsus until I heard of Father Isaac.
Yeah.
And the spiritual treasures that have been hidden from us, it's felt like robbery. And I'll give you an example. I read a quote from St. Alphonsus the other day that just blew me away, and it changed my life. And I think it was somebody that introduced me to this quote. He was quoting St. Anselm. St. Alphonsus was talking about Our Lady's. She was so obsessed with the will of God. It was so perfect in her life. He said that if the the Roman soldiers, if they would have had compassion on Christ and walked away, she would have she would have put those nails in his hands herself. Like as much as it would have hurt her, this is what needed to happen.
If this is God's will,
she was going to do it.
mm-hmm.
That, like, just that understanding changed my life. And I'm just like I don't care. Like, if it hurts, it's effeminacy. It's like, if it feels good and I want to do it, if it's against God, it's like, why am I picking this moment of satisfaction versus the greater good of doing his will? And I think if you show that to teens, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, you're giving them a sense of purpose and a battle that they can get engaged in. That's how you're going to win those souls and get them ready for spiritual warfare. Versus the whole God loves you, God loves you, God loves you.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be that, especially among men.
Yeah, that's great advice. The other thing I've done with my kids is I told them that if you ever have something on your conscience and you come and tell me about it before I find out about it, not if you get in trouble in school and I'm going to get a phone call from the teacher, but if something's on your conscience and it's bothering you, if you come to me and talk to me about it, you will get no consequences. None. Like, I will forgive anything you did. And my daughter came up to me after telling that. Everybody laughed and they all went back to the room. My daughter came up to me and a couple months before that, my son was missing $20 and my daughter stole the $20. And she came over to me and she goes, Daddy, I stole Nikki's $20. I said, not only are you not in trouble, I'm giving you the 20. Go give it to your brother. And she went and gave the 20 back to her brother. And I think like that's a good thing to do with your kids, to show them how merciful, like you really are the emblem for God the Father to your children, So it was just a little thing that I did with my kids that I saw it in action, like it worked, and it was like, but yeah, I think I'm going to maybe for next Lent, I'm going to follow up on your advice and I'm going to actually start reading St. Alphonsus to the kids this Lent when it comes up. Like those are the times where you really, as a father, you have a chance to say, hey, this is Lent. Like, I don't care what your plans are. We're doing stuff as a family. We're doing this tonight. We're doing this tonight. Maybe do a different traditional devotion with the kids as a family.
Especially with Lent, St. Alphonsus's meditations on the stations are the best there is.
They are.
Bar none.
James was asking, what about the coming schism? Because that's in the title.
I forgot we put that in the title.
Sometimes we just throw a title up there to get you guys to click on it. Apparently, James.
I'm going to change. I mean, I usually change the title after we do the show anyways.
Yeah, well, we have a general idea of what we're going to talk about and what we might get to. And I was thinking, if we're talking about like the left cat stuff, right? We were talking about that earlier, and we were saying how crazy they were going just over an Ad Orientem photo. And we're talking about how these people, they pretend this is about obedience to Francis, but it's really not. They want to overturn the Catholic moral foundation. Like, that is what they are hoping to get from the synod. And my point is, if after Francis you get any kind of a holy pope of any kind, if you get a Cardinal Sarah after Francis, because a lot of the cardinals do have Francis fatigue, I think you will see a schism. I think that we all have this moral obligation to stay within the church because we know this is the church that Christ founded, and we're not going to leave just because a couple of people in the hierarchy are trying to upend that. But I don't think the other side has such qualms. I think you'll see something similar to the Reformation split.
For the German bishops, France is not left enough.
Yep.
That's what I mean. Like, they're not satisfied with what Francis is doing. Yeah. They lose their minds anytime he says anything even borderline orthodox, right? Yeah. It's like, so for them, this synod is there. Like, they really think they have it in the bag.
I think it is all, it won't so much depend necessarily on if we get a conservative pope. It's going to be dependent upon if we get a pope charitable enough that he's willing to actually excommunicate people.
Yes. You're asking a lot.
Well, I know, because no pope, since Pius XII or earlier, Pius XII, did he excommunicate Feeney? Was that the last big excommunication? I think it might be.
The new Inquisition is apostolic visitations, and it doesn't root out heresy. It roots out orthodoxy, right? That's what we're seeing with Strickland. Like
Yeah.
it's everything is so inverted right now.
Right.
We're literally looking at an upside down church. It's a very strange time. And Rob's saying that. I mean, I would say even sanction.
Mm.
Like it's like excommunication. You're asking for courage, and I hope to God that we have a man in there like that could get elected.
Yeah. Well, I think what's unfortunate, because we're talking about the Ad Orientem picture and people just having an absolute conniption because of it. Just like politics, I think we fall into this in the church. People have drawn the line, pick their side, and anytime the other side does something that they don't like, they just go crazy. It's literally just become, it's our side versus yours. We have the Pope what we want right now. But the question is, what happens if the next Pope, I don't think it will be, what happens if the next Pope is extremely traditional in a sense?
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be a Pius the 13th is my point, right?
No,
Like I don't think it needs. I mean, I think honestly, if you got a Benedict the 17th,
Yeah.
I think you're going to see a schism. Like I know a lot of people think that won't fix anything.
Erdo.
I
Erdo's one of them.
Who?
Cardinal Erdo. Hungary. He's from Hungary.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If he becomes Pope, he has a great chance to become a Pope. He would run as a pontificate similar to Benedict's.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that alone would cause a rupture, like a severe rupture, man. It's like, and I also think that if you have a long period of interregnum, like while there's no one at the helm, I think you'll see the German bishops go their way. And I think a lot of other bishops will follow them. And then if you get somebody like that in, you'll see they're just never going to come back. Like, I don't know. I think that there's something coming soon that is, you're going to see a separation of the wheat and the chaff. However that happens, I don't know, but I do think that's coming. And I think that's going to be necessary. Like it's a lot of people think the separation of the wheat and the chaff comes at the end of time. It doesn't. It happens during the persecution of Antichrist. So like God starts separating the wheat from the chaff on earth before the second coming, and before the period of peace, I think, which I'm pretty sure all of us ascribe to that, right? Like that we're going to see a resurrection of the church. Right, like we're I don't think we're in the end times, like Jesus is coming any day. Like, no, I think you're going to see the total death and resurrection of the church. You will see a glorious resurrection.
We haven't seen the time of peace Our Lady offered, promised yet. So you're right.
That's how I feel. Yeah. So, guys, please subscribe. Please join Rob and I's locals. Like we're so close to hitting that 50 mark, and that's when we will be able to do some real shows for people who support the channel. Like we're giving you guys 2 days a week here. We try to bring you guys as much. We try to bring something different than anybody else is doing. We're trying to just show that like you can just have normal, friendly conversations with each other. You don't have to be condemning people that don't agree with you, things like that. Like you can have a wide variety of opinions with us, but we really do need people to support this channel. I don't want to work Saturdays anymore. I would love to have I get to stay home with my family on Saturdays. The locals videos are fire. We're gonna do something special on locals once we hit that number. So we're asking kindly, guys. Like think about all the things you give your money to. It's all garbage.
Yeah.
Like you could be supporting something that really, really, we're trying to build something special here. And eventually, dude, my dream, like I've talked to you about this, Fawaz, I want to start doing conferences. Like I really do. I want to build up an audience big enough that we can start doing conferences. And like all these people, not yet, but if we get to the number we want. All right, I'll tell you what. If we get to 50, we're doing a trivia show. I promise we'll do trivia when we hit 50 on locals.
There you go.
Yeah, Dave, we're doing trivia on locals if we hit 50. But no, I want all these people that we've been bringing on the channel: Father Isaac, Joshua Charles, Tim Gordon, Kennedy Hall, Fawaz, like all the friends that we've made, Michael Hitchborn. We want to do Father Laval. Like, we don't just want to do the canceled priest thing. We want to do other things. Like, we have a very solid group of friends that are friends of this channel, and we don't have to do some big major thing like the canceled priest conference. We could just do like a smaller thing where we just get to go. And like, I honestly think it would be cool if like you guys have a men's group and you want me and Rob to come out. Maybe I'll give a small talk or something, and me and Rob will just come and hang with you guys for the weekend.
Can I tell you what we're looking to do in our parish?
Yeah.
Just the Somerset parish, but there's a community of guys. Your cousin and I have been talking about this. We eventually want to buy at least a little spot in Georgetown downtown. It's a beautiful spot where we have it's pretty much a Catholic-owned, community-owned pub with cigars. I would be in charge of getting event speakers once a month.
Yeah.
And we'd have guys just come in, and
that's like a legit men's group.
It's a legit men's group, and it's a legit community of trade workers that just give one to one another, because we want to create a commonwealth economy of just within the Catholic parish community and be away from the system. So once that gets set up, you guys can come on. We'll have cigars, listen to you guys talk. You guys can do a show on there live. It'll be great.
Yeah, listen, the average men's group will get a Catholic speaker to come in. He'll give his talk for an hour and then split. I don't want to do that.
Right.
Like, I want to be able, like, if you guys have a men's group and you want Rob and I to come, we will both come and spend the weekend with you guys. Like, we'll go and do like fraternity for a day. You know what I mean? Like, we'll come, we'll do a thing at the parish, and then we all go out for cigars and drinks afterward, and we actually spend time together, because I really think it's very important to spend time with other Catholics, man. Like, you can't just do this stuff on an island by yourself. Like, you have to be able to have fraternity with other men, especially. And if there's women that are like, if it's not just a men's group and like the women want to do something, like we could just do something. Like, if me and Rob got to bring the wives, we'll bring the wives. It may cost you guys a little more.
Joe, I don't know if they'll let us into Australia. And even if they do, I'm worried about being let out.
No, Joe, we'll fly you into America before that happens.
Yeah. Can I make a push real quickly, if you guys don't mind?
100%.
If anybody is interested, if you have a parish interested, I'm starting to rack up all these gigs. So I'm starting to do performances. I got one in LA, North Carolina, Texas. I'm going to Michigan. I was just in Virginia. So young adult and youth ministry, confirmation program, whatever it is, let them know. I'll come in as long as they want. What I do is I come in, I do performances, I speak in between, I give the traditional faith, but I do some rap stuff in between. And here's the thing. I ask that my expenses are covered, and the way my stipend works, I don't have a set stipend. I'm doing St. Joseph style. Whatever the parish can afford, whatever the parish wants to give, I'll be happy for. I don't care what the price is. Whatever they give, I'll accept. I don't have a set.
Yeah, as long as your expenses are covered. After that, it's just charity. Like,
charity.
That's
donate.
That's
my
awesome.
Family would appreciate it. So if y'all got something, that'd be great. Yeah, I'll come.
I'm telling you guys right now, we are going to eventually do like, it's not going to be something huge like the Catholic Identity Conference or the Coalition for Canceled Priests Conference. It's going to be a smaller thing where we just get a venue. Enoch's going to open. He's going to MC it. He's going to do some music, and you're going to get a couple of speakers in between. And it'll be, an overnight. It'll be a weekend thing. It'll be like a Friday night into Saturday, and then we get to spend Saturday together. Like, this is really what I would like to do. It's like, I just think these kinds of things are important, and if that means I got to start, writing new talks and things like that, I mean, I really enjoyed giving that talk, man.
Man, it was such an awesome talk.
I appreciate it.
Believe it or not, everyone, Anthony did write it. I didn't even get to read it beforehand.
I wanted it to be a surprise.
Incredible.
I wanted it to be a surprise. But I mean, listen, a lot of the stuff is the stuff Rob and I have been working out on air, right? Like, he's helped me develop so many of those ideas, even though he didn't write it. Like, talking to Rob verbally is what helped me figure a lot of these things out. If it wasn't for Rob, that talk doesn't exist. But it was a really cool experience to go and like present my thesis to everybody, and the reception I got was so awesome, man.
Amazing talk.
Fawaz, where can how do people contact you if they want to have you at an event?
So they can email me holy40project@gmail.com.
And follow him on Instagram, Holy40Project.
Yeah.
What happened with that? What happened with the Holy 40 Project?
So I still have it. And the people, I have an email list. People email me. I just send it to them. It's free now, so anybody can have it. If you want the Holy 40 project, let me know. I'll send it to you through your email. It helps eradicate the vices that you have, the predominant vices. It's very Thomistic in its approach.
Because I knew you from that before I ever talked to you.
Is that right?
I've been following you on Holy 40 Project from forever.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like long before I even knew who you were, you know?
A lot of people did that, and they were like, what's with the rapping? And it's like, most people don't know that I've been making music since 8th grade. I just stopped for 10 years.
You see, you know Ruslan, the Protestant rapper?
No.
Oh, you got to set me. I got to get this guy on.
Ruslan.
Yeah, Ruslan. He's a Protestant rapper. He's from, he's got like, oh, man. I think he's from, oh, man, I don't know. What's your original heritage?
I'm Syriac.
Yeah, he is too. I'm pretty sure he's Syriac.
Really?
He's Protestant. Yeah. But I like his channel. He does a lot of cultural stuff, so he doesn't get too deep into theology, so I could tolerate it. You know, he's not going to. He's just talking like cultural things from a Christian perspective. So he's one of the few Protestants I'll actually listen to. But all right, guys, this is a great show, man. When they go fast, you know it was a good one.
Yeah, thanks. This was a blast. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, dude, I love having you on, man. Anytime you want to come and hang, you got an open invite.
Hold on. There's a MAGA rap scene?
I can't stand it, man. They're ambulance chasers. That's what I call them. They're just chasing the next topic, making a song about it so they can stay relevant.
Oh, is that Marjorie Taylor Greene rap song? Oh, yeah. Man, that was so cringe.
I'm so glad we didn't have to play that tonight.
Don't get me started on the music industry. It's just become just
it was
a piece
so
of garbage.
Cringe, that guy. And that guy, like, yeah, he's acting like he's a MAGA rapper. Then he's got other songs where he's talking about pimping girls and stuff. It's like, come on, stop it, dude. What are you doing? It's like Lauren Boebert. I started getting on her today because she's acting like she's putting up tweets with pictures of family values. It's like, you left your husband and children to go, like, you now what? You go and live in your best life as a congresswoman, and you abandon your family, and you're gonna tell me about Joe Biden's bribes? You're infinitely worse than Joe Biden. You abandon your husband, filed for divorce. Go home.
But Anthony, we gotta save the country. I'm gonna save the country myself.
Save your marriage. How are you gonna save the country? You can't save your marriage.
Yep.
Taking moral advice from a woman like you.
Yep.
These people nauseate me. We're gonna save the country. No, you're not. You're not saving anything.
No.
I'm not saving anything. These people, honestly, man.
What did Chesterton say? What did Chesterton say? Raising a woman can. What is it? What did he say? Something about woman has more worth. She gives more to the world raising one child the right way than a million votes.
It's crazy. It's like you. I don't understand anybody that could get behind a person saying they're going to save the country when they couldn't save their family. Like, I have absolutely no, like, dude, especially even her husband, dude. Like, my thing with men is like, dude, you have one job to keep your family together. Yep. You can't keep your family together. Come on, man. And I understand people make mistakes, and later on, you know, it all happens. But Rob's going straight to heaven. No purgatory for him. Yep, he's my favorite. Rob's everybody's favorite.
That's because, yeah, like I told Anthony today, or I think you said it, and people don't realize I'm the bad cop.
Every once in a while, Rob's ruthless side will come out, and people are like, "Oh,
man,
Rob said that." I'm like,
tweet was good.
I'm the nice one, though. I talk tough once in a while, but Rob's not the nice one. I'm the nice one. If you ever meet me in person, I'm gonna be super friendly. Rob's gonna be like, "Oh, these people." But Waz, man, you're one of my favorite people in the world, man. I cannot wait to meet you in person. I'm so glad that I befriended you, that I forced you to be my friend. We're building quite a fun crew here, man. So, guys, thank you for joining us. Please go join our locals. Hit like, subscribe. We will see you on Thursday with Kennedy Hall. Hall Thursday. We have a very fun show at Kennedy Hall. We're going to break down Jordan Peterson and Bill Maher's conversation about the Bible, and we'll see if any good news stories pop up, and that's what we're going to get into with Kennedy. Kennedy is also one of my favorite people, man. What a brilliant dude.
Very smart.
So, all right, Rob, take us out.
I'm not gay no more. I am This goes out to all you men out there who are inclined to submit yourself to the lowest faculties in the most pathetic manner. You effeminate man think you were created in order to consume endless amount of pleasure without any consequences? Put your damn video games and smartphones down and pick up something heavy. Do something arduous for once. Pray daily. Submit yourself under the interior discipline. Learn a trade. Buy some land. Get married and have lots of kids so that may you one day raise a generation of virtuous warriors. Learn the rules of the retrograde.